everybody. Welcome to Youth Night Live. My name is Brandon, and Ethan is sick, so we're going to have to do this. Don't worry, it's not COVID-19. And we're just going to have to do a really quick Youth Night Live tonight. But we have some cool things that we have going on tonight. So Thomas, A-Duddle, and Best Friends are back for some more time of worship tonight, as well as we have a guest speaker tonight. Marty Baker is going to be giving us a message from God's Word. So we're really excited about those two things. Also, it is the Final Four, the Youth Night Live Movie Bracket Challenge. And so we're going to get right into that right now. See you in a second. All right, so we are into the final four of the Youth Night Live Movie Bracket Challenge. We have the Popcorn region versus the Icy region, with Marvel Avengers versus Lord of the Rings. And this one was an absolute destroyer. Avengers is an absolute monster. 43 votes to 13 for Lord of the Rings. The Avengers move on. And then in the Nachos versus Reese's Pieces, we have Star Wars and we have Harry Potter. And ladies and gentlemen, I believe that this is an absolute upset. And I believe our panel here in a moment is going to agree. Star Wars ends up beating Harry Potter. Yes, Star Wars wins by 2 votes. Just 2 votes. Star Wars beats Harry Potter by just 2 votes. And so we're going to get right into our conversation with our panel. So introducing our good friends, you know them best, our correspondents for the Youth Night Live Movie Bracket Challenge, Nate Bundy and Rylan Millette. Back, everybody. I'm here with my good friend Nate Bundy and Rylan Millette, our correspondents for Youth Night Live. Guys, thank you so much for being here with me today. And man, this was
always a pleasure, Brandon.
This was always crazy week, right? I mean, like, this is absolutely insane. Like, I'm blown out of the water, and we're going to get to all that here in just a second. But let's first talk about the one that we all expected, how it was supposed to go, which was Popcorn versus Icy, Marvel Avengers coming on top of Lord of the Rings. Rylan, let's start with you.
I'm pretty happy with this one. I don't know. I never got that much into the Lord of the Rings. I liked The Hobbit, but Marvel Avengers is a beast of a franchise to go up against. So like I said before, they have all the other franchises just as backstory to these movies. So yep. They definitely had an unfair advantage, I feel. And they came out on top, and I'm happy with it. So,
you know, this was expected, and I'm happy with it as well. I'll start with that. I am happy with it as well, but there is some sadness that comes with that. Not anger or frustration or anything like that. There's just some sadness to it, and I guess that we're kind of the point where with these final four that we had, they're all favorites. They're all these huge mega franchises, and so we just have to someone has to lose.
Yeah.
I think that when you're looking at the end of the day, this is movie franchises, and it's not the cultural foundational, or book series or anything like that. I think that I had to check myself, and I think that a large portion of the heartstrings that are being tugged towards Lord of the Rings have to do with the books that I grew up reading before they made the movies, and how Lord of the Rings really shaped and defined the fantasy genre. Fantasy genre, it kind of normalized it and turned it into this cool thing. And I'll forever be grateful to Lord of the Rings for that, and especially what Lord of the Rings movies did. Well, I think what Lord of the Rings movies did was, it was the very beginning, in the early 2000s. What it did was it popularized nerd culture. Nerd culture before 2000 was, there wasn't this, now we have this differentiation between geeks and nerds, and all that kind of stuff. And Lord of the Rings turned that, whenever you watch movie tropes, and since we're talking about movies, and you see the nerd culture, they're these outcasts and they're weird, and and nobody likes them. And when this movie came out, and all of a sudden, and Dungeons and Dragons was a thing that was played in your mom's basement with a bunch of people who smelled. That was what they thought nerd culture was. And so when Lord of the Rings came out, I had some friends in college, and I was super into it because I've always been a little bit nerdy. And I think I've already shared that, I was almost bought the One Ring, and I had a counter on my computer, and I had all these friends who were like making so much fun of me, saying, "Dude, you're such a nerd," whatever. And the Fellowship of the Ring came out over Christmas break. And so I was there opening night, but I wasn't with several of my friends. And like a week or so later, they went and watched it, and they texted me back and said, "We have to go watch the Two Towers opening night." And what it did was, it turned this fantasy genre where now all of a sudden, within college and high school, Dungeons and Dragons is no longer a thing in the basement. I know several youth groups that do this together. Mm-hmm. And so I'm forever grateful for it. But at the end of the day, movie franchise, Avengers is just a juggernaut, man, because they have, it is what it is. I wouldn't call it an unfair advantage, but it is an advantage to be able to have all of these other franchises, to give them the backstory, to really enrich the characterization of these characters. So you got to have crazy action and big, and good character development. It's a juggernaut. And so I'm sad, but the right movie franchise came out on top. Yeah. Unlike the next bracket, which I am not sad about, I'm frustrated with. I'm frustrated.
All right, so why don't we just get right into that one then? So it's Nachos versus Reese's Pieces. Star Wars ends up winning by 2 votes to Harry Potter, you guys. Absolutely not expected whatsoever. And here's where it comes down to me. I can watch Star Wars and not get emotional. I love the soundtrack. I love the storyline, but I don't get any tears. Harry Potter, I cried. And it's because it's so good. And I think that's part of my childhood even, and I've read all these books. These were the cool things to read when you were doing the AR tests and reading Harry Potter books, and everybody was buying them, and everybody Walmart had lines out the door to buy the books, and so my heart is really in Harry Potter, and it's something that I read every single year. I try to read the whole series every year. I'm actually on book 4 right now, and I'm upset. I'm upset because of that fact. But on the other side of that, I don't think that you can take a franchise that is so many decades old and put it all together and create the beautiful story that Star Wars has created. There's no other. I don't think there's any other.
The beautiful story told 3 times through 3 different trilogies.
But it's so good. It's so good.
It is good. It is good. I'll let you finish.
I just think that there's a lot to be said about the universe that Star Wars has created, and we all know this. You know, Ethan can even relate to this. Nate, I know that you can relate to this. Rylan, you've probably heard me talk about this before, but like Star Wars, I think the reason why Star Wars is such a good trilogy and a trilogy and a trilogy is because it shares from the greatest story of all time, and that's the story of Jesus. And there's so much, you know, you've got darkness and light fighting against each other, and darkness is trying to overthrow the light, and you've got one person, the chosen one, that steps out and does these incredible things that nobody else could do, and has the courage to face the darkness, you know, straight on. And like, that's just the story of Jesus. And I think that, you know, something that from a creator standpoint inside of all of us has really pulled that out of the heartstrings of humanity to say, man, Star Wars is definitely going to be even a show or a movie series like Harry Potter. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Rylan, go ahead.
Yeah, let's go, Trekkie. See what you got.
Yeah. So I am disappointed that Star Wars made it this far. Y'all really let me down. Y'all should have taken it down. I think Star Trek should have made it past the first round because they're very good. And typically, like with people, I'm always like, if they say they're a Star Wars fan, I just kind of like look at them like evil eyes, like, and then just judge them silently. And then sometimes I'll say it to their face that they're a terrible person. But really, Star Wars is a good franchise, you know, and they did a great job. The soundtrack was great, and they did have a good story, and I think that was there was a very novel part of it. I did think they told it, you know, 3 times, you know, they told it over and over again, but they did a good job with the world building, and it was a good story, and they had, you know, good character development, and my point with Star Trek is that, I don't know, it's futuristic, and they just have a lot of ideas, like scientific ideas, ethical ideas, you know, and they just present things, and they're going on adventures, and they kind of use it as a platform to address, like, I don't know, things in society, you know, that need to be talked about, and there's just, I don't know, I really like that kind of thing, just where it makes you think, which is why I love Star Trek. But Star Wars definitely hasn't beat with just the story, you know, and being able to tell a good story that gets people hooked, and so I can see how they made it this far, but I am disappointed, and I'm definitely disappointed that Harry Potter got out, just because I am a big fan of Harry Potter, and I have all my memorabilia. Actually, it's on my shelf. I have all my wand. I'll show you right now.
Yes, inside Rylan's room, exclusive right now.
Can I turn my screen around? What is this? Oh, look. I have all my wands.
Yes.
And there's the Marauders map back there. And my owl.
Do you have a quaffle?
Oh, it's somewhere. It's not here.
Because we have a quaffle at our house too.
Birdie Bots, every flavor beans, chocolate frog. Got everything.
Oh,
That's awesome.
Don't mind my room. But so it's a shame. It's a shame that Harry Potter got out. But yeah.
Okay. Once again, you have to separate the book franchise from the movie franchise, and the book franchise is of course more rich, and you know, more characterization, you know, and like I said, the only thing that I think could make Harry Potter better, I don't know how they would pull it off, is if they made it a mini series, and each year was a season. and they could do that. But I think that if they did that, they would need to borrow so much of what the movie makers did, because I think the movie makers did the best job of any series ever of taking the universe created in the books and really putting it into life in an appropriate way. But you do have to separate movies from books. I still think that it's the wrong choice here, because we're talking about a movie franchise, not singular movie, or just one or two or three or whatever. And all 8 of Harry Potter's are good. All 8 are not good, fantastic. And I know it's because they split the Deathly Hallows. That's why all 8 are fantastic. Star Wars, I don't know. I don't know what would have happened if they would have just left episode 4, 5, and 6 and just left it there. I don't know where I would be, but I can't, because they made 1, 2, 3, and 7, 8, 9, and me trying to enter the minds of someone who would vote for Star Wars over Harry Potter. Here's what I always take back. Growing up, my favorite of episode 4, 5, and 6, because 1, 2, and 3 didn't come out till I think 2002 or 3.
Yeah.
I was like a sophomore, junior in college. And I know that all of y'all high schoolers were just born, or not even born yet at that time. I know, it's crazy. So growing up, I was that age when, with 4, 5, and 6. And my favorite by far growing up of 4, 5, and 6 was 6, man. It was Return of the Jedi. I loved the Ewoks so much. There was so much. And if you look at what was the most campy of those movies, it was episode 6. It was Return of the Jedi. And a lot of Star Wars fans that were adults whenever 4, 5, and 6 came out, they did not like 6 near as much as 4 and 5, because it was more campy, because the Ewoks made it more kid-friendly, and they were like, are they just making this movie to sell action figures, or are they, and so knowing that, and putting that into how I feel about 1, 2, and 3, to me, there's no excuse for episode 2. It just sucks all the way across. Okay. To me, I think the acting was terrible. I think the love story was done awfully. But my most hated character through all of it is Jar Jar Binks. I cannot stand Jar Jar Binks. He is so annoying. And in episode 2, they heard all of the adults saying how much they hated Jar Jar, and they replaced Jar Jar with C-3PO in that movie, as far as that comedic relief or whatever. And I hated C-3PO in that movie. So, but if I talk to people who were kids when 1, 2, and 3 came out, they love Jar Jar, and I'm like, how can you like Jar Jar? But they love him. And so, with the campiness of it, when you look across all ages, the kids love some of those characters that I can't stand, just like the adults hated the Ewoks, and I loved them growing up, and I still love them because it makes me nostalgic. And so that's the only excuse I can give for the people who voted for Star Wars. And I know that's a super long explanation, but I'm trying to get into their minds. At the end of the day, Star Wars won. The voters have spoken, and all I can hope for now is for the Avengers to come in and crush Star Wars as much as they crushed Lord of the Rings this week. And that's my hope. That's my prediction, is that because Avengers across all ages, adult and kid, everyone loves it.
Yeah. Well, regardless, Disney is happy. We'll just say that. Disney is very happy with where we're at, because they win. No matter what happens this next round, they're going to win. Disney wins.
The Illuminati are feeling happy.
All right. So the official final 2 of best movie franchises ever from PG-13 and down is Star Wars, Star Wars, and the Avengers. Not the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Avenger movies. Rylan, who has your vote?
I don't know. I think, personally, I think I'm gonna definitely say Avengers over Star Wars. But I think as far as predictions to who would win, I think a thing to point out is that with these top four, I feel like these top four were all movies that were really big in world building. Like, they built a world and they sucked you into the world. And it's funny because I would think of Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter as doing a better job of world building. But I think, but I'm thinking maybe Avengers and Star Wars won because they also did world building, but they had more opportunity to. They have more quantity of movies. Because Avengers had that big backstory, and I mean, Star Wars is Star Wars and it's humongous. And so I think they had a bigger opportunity to do that world building. So I think, as far as predictions, I think Avengers has that bigger scope of movies and television series and everything, to create that world. And I think that might give it the same edge it gave it in the Final Four, over Star Wars. So I think Avengers might have this one.
My vote's for Avengers. They do everything. The only thing that Star Wars might have on it is some of their action sequences, especially in episode 1, 2, and 3. I thought we had some fantastic action, even better than 7, 8, and 9. But the Avengers, if Star Wars does beat action, their action beats Avengers. It's by a slight margin because Avengers has some awesome fights as well. I mean, you just can't get around how awesome some of those fights are. But the storytelling, oh man, you're saying Harry Potter made you cry and Star Wars didn't. Harry Potter didn't make me cry. Star Wars didn't make me cry. Avengers made me boohoo. Like, I was watching it with my children. My kids just got old enough to start watching the Avengers movies after it had already come out, and so I was wanting to watch it with them. And so I just rewatched the ones that I'd already seen. But then, whenever we got to Endgame and Infinity War, I hadn't seen those yet. I hadn't let myself see those because my kids were catching up to it. And so, whenever Endgame came out, we were watching it in my living room, and my wife was in a separate room and had to come and see what was happening because we were, because my daughter was like, and so then we started laughing. So we're crying and laughing, and she had to see what is going on. I mean, it just pulled the heartstrings. Incredible storytelling. I think Avengers has to take it. Unless the voters shock me, I think Avengers will take it.
Yeah. Well, it's all up to our voters. Yeah, it's all up to our voters for sure. And so it looks like the Avengers might have a really good shot, just tanking their way through the entire bracket. We'll see what happens. So this is for everybody that's watching this right now. Voting is going to go live here in just a couple of minutes. So make sure that you get on and vote. And we would love for you to be participating in that. It would be really, really interesting to just watch a live feed of the votes coming in. I wish that we had some way of doing that, because being able to watch this entire thing from the Google Docs and watching it all just come together, and watching, like when Jurassic Park tied Lord of the Rings, and you're just watching that just kind of fight back and forth. You're just like, oh my goodness, I have no idea what is about to happen. And I think this is going to be the exact same way of the buildup of this is so stinking close. I'm predicting 1 vote difference here. That's what I'm predicting.
I hope not.
We'll see.
We'll see.
All right. Well, Nate and Rylan, again, thank you so much for doing this. We've got 1 more week. We're going to talk about the final results. We're going to talk about the entire bracket next week just to kind of get an overall spectrum of your thoughts. And we're going to see which franchise is the best. So, again, Nate and Rylan, thank you so much for joining us on Youth Night Live. We really appreciate you. It is my honor to introduce to you tonight our guest speaker, Marty Baker. I've known Marty as a youth minister for several years now. He's a good friend of mine. I love him to death. I admire him. I think he's one of the best in the business when it comes to youth ministry. So I know that you're going to be blessed by what he has to say tonight. So give it up for my good friend, Marty Baker.
So I'm curious, how do you respond to overwhelming situations in your life? The date was November 23rd, 2009. I was 25 years old and my wife and I were living in Lubbock, Texas. It was a perfect 73-degree night, and while hanging out with some of my friends, I remember the moment that it hit me. Guys, this is crazy. 1 month from today is Mel's due date. I mean, that's nuts to think that 1 month from today, I'm gonna be a dad. And they all agreed, yes, it's crazy, and that I really need to grow up a whole lot over the next month. But I went to bed with that thought in my head. Only 1 more month and I'll be a dad. And the next morning, I wake up to my wife yelling from the bathroom, "Marty, my water just broke. I think the baby is coming." Now, I don't know how you're picturing my reaction in this moment, but I can assure you that it didn't just calmly come out as, "Coming, dear, I shall get the light jacket and a pillow and we shall be on our way." No, it was much more of a full-on panic. Fly out of the bed, get your feet tangled in the sheets, hit your face on the ground, throw random mismatched clothes in a bag that's way too big for the hospital, run through the house yelling, "Where are my keys? Has anybody seen my keys?" Yeah, it was a little unnerving when life throws you a curveball that you didn't expect. And yet we made it to the hospital, spent 13 hours in labor, which was really rough. Plus my wife was also having a hard time, and we finally got to meet our little boy. And I remember my eyes tearing up and I wept. I mean, I wept as I was overwhelmed by the sheer emotions of this moment. And this story in my life reminds me of a point in Jesus' life when he was overwhelmed by a situation. And we're given the easiest memory verse ever. Jesus wept. But you know, it really is a powerful verse if you know the actual reason why Jesus wept. And to better understand the reason, you have to go to the 4th book in the New Testament, the Gospel of John, which is a book that tells about the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. But John is so different than the other 3 books before it, in that John is more of an artist. The other Gospels lay things out a certain way, and John's over here like, well, I'm going to move this here, and all of these parables are great, but I'm not going for that. And I'll word these things a little bit differently so that maybe people will pick up on what I'm really saying. And oh man, it's so awesome when you start seeing what John is really doing. In fact, John wants you to see it so badly that he makes seeing a major theme throughout the book. Jesus invites others to come and see. But all throughout, people are often said to be unable to see. People are always misunderstanding what Jesus is doing or saying. Jesus' disciples misunderstand. Jesus' friends misunderstand. And especially crowds or unnamed groups that John just kind of calls the Jews. They're always misunderstanding and getting things wrong. But the hope is that you and I will pick up on their inability to see, and that we will be able to see the hidden message that lies underneath. So take this story in John chapter 11, for instance. Jesus catches word that his dear friend Lazarus is very sick. And when he hears this, he declares to his disciples, "This sickness will not end in death." And then we're told in verses 5 and 6, now Jesus loved Martha and her sister Mary and their brother Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed right where he was for 2 more days. Now, this should strike you as both really weird and also kind of not weird at all. When you hear someone you love is really sick and they've sent word to you so that you can do something about it, you don't just plop down and hang out for a couple of days because you love them so much. But at the same time, Jesus had already said, this doesn't end in death. So since Jesus knows that, we're told that it is out of love for this family that he stays put. And his disciples, his closest followers, take his word for it. Then, after a couple of days pass, Jesus tells his disciples that it's time to go because our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going to wake him up. And I love that Jesus' disciples are like, oh, Jesus, allow us to impart some knowledge and educate you on how sleep works. Because you see, when people fall asleep, people wake up on their own. But of course, they were misunderstanding. So in verse 14, Jesus tells them plainly, look, Lazarus is dead. And you can almost sense them going, oh, but you said he wasn't going to die. You stood right there and you said the sickness does not end in death. And this throws them off completely. And Jesus knows it and he continues to say, Lazarus is dead, and for your sake, I'm glad that I wasn't there so that you may believe. Now take note of this. Why did this happen? What's the point of all of this? It's that they would believe. Well, that's kind of weird. I mean, they already believe. They've been following him around. They left everything just to follow him because they believe. So what is Jesus hoping that they'll believe? Anyway, we're told that they arrive in Bethany, the home of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus has been dead and in the tomb for 4 days at this point. And in verse 19, it says, and many Jews, there's that group, had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. I told you to watch for that group because it should cue you to misunderstanding that's coming up in the text. So see if you can pick up on it as we enter into a weird, just artistically crafted roller coaster between Jesus and the sisters of Lazarus. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Right? I mean, right out the gate. But she says, I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask. Yeah, that's right. And Jesus says to her, your brother will rise again. And Martha answers, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Oh, like, no, that's not, okay. So Jesus says to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. Do you believe this? And she says, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God who has come to the world. Yeah. And so later Mary hears that he's here, and so she gets up and she goes to him, and there's almost this sense that, okay, Martha didn't get it, but maybe Mary will. So here we go. And when the Jews who had been with Mary in the house comforting her noticed how quickly she got up and ran out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. They misunderstand everything. But when Mary reaches the place where Jesus was and she sees him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And here we go again. And John says that when Jesus sees her weeping and he sees the people with her weeping, he's deeply moved in spirit and he's troubled by this. Notice that Jesus is troubled by this sight. No matter how hard he tries to help them see, they just don't get it. Where have you laid him? He asks. And the Jews reply, come and see, Lord. They tell him that he needs to see. And that's just more than he can take. And we hit that verse. Jesus wept. So often we act like Jesus is overcome by the loss of a friend and the tears of the family, and he mourns because he's sad too. And while I do believe that God is moved by our pain, that is not what's happening here. Watch, you'll see. In the next verse, then the Jews said to him, aw, see how he loved him? They miss it. And some other Jews say, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind have kept this man from dying? Oh my goodness, they couldn't miss it any more than that. Jesus, because they said this, once again is more just deeply moved. And he goes to the tomb, and the roller coaster actually continues further. And you can read all of that later in John 11, but spoiler alert, Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. You may have heard that verse, Jesus wept, before today, but I want you to see that the thing that moves Jesus to tears is not grief. Jesus weeps because these disciples and friends believe that he is the Messiah, the Son of God, but they fail to believe that that has any impact on their real life situation right in front of them. The key to their joy, the key to their future, even the key to life is right in front of them, and they can't see it, and Jesus weeps. At the beginning of this video, I asked you a question. How do you respond to overwhelming situations in your life? And I went on to talk about how having our first kid brought me to tears. And I told you that that story reminds me of this story. But it wasn't because I wept and also Jesus wept. No, no, no. It's the fact that in the midst of the panic, in the midst of an overwhelming situation, most of us in those scenarios go, where are my keys? Where are they? I can't find my keys. Has anyone seen them? Whenever they've been right here in your hands the whole time. For those who accept Jesus as the Son of God, that means more than just being saved from your sins and experiencing heaven someday later. It's about life here and now. But so often we're too busy saying, God, do you see my life? Like, do you see what's happening? Do you see where I'm at? That we completely miss God in tears going, I know, I see it, but don't you see? I'm trying to show you something. The keys to your next move are right in your hands. The keys to a friendship in the midst of loneliness. The keys to joy in the midst of your sorrow. The keys to a new adventure when life feels stale. The keys to peace alongside of the anxiety. You see, I've come to learn that the best thing that we can do when we are overwhelmed is to say, God, what am I not seeing? Show it to me and help me believe that you hold the keys to life here and now. Like Jesus' friends, it may take a few conversations and even a few misunderstandings, but you can trust that God will stick with you through it and that God has amazing life in store for you when you finally see it.
I sought the Lord, and He answered me, and delivered me from every fear. Those who look on Him are radiant. They'll never be ashamed. They'll never be ashamed. This poor man cried, and the Lord heard me, and saved me from my enemies. The Son of God surrounds His saints. He will deliver them. He will deliver them. Magnify the Lord with me. Come exalt His name together. Glorify the Lord with me. Come exalt His name forever. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Oh, blessed is he who hides in Him. Oh, fear the Lord, all of your saints. He'll give you everything. He'll give you everything. And magnify the Lord with me. Come exalt His name together. Glorify the Lord with me. Come exalt His name forever.
Let us bless the Lord every day and night. Never-ending praise. May our incense rise. Let us bless the Lord every day and night.
his name. Together glorify the Lord with me, and come exalt his name forever, and magnify the Lord with me, and come exalt his name together, and glorify the Lord with me. Come exalt his name forever. I will sing forever of your love. Come down with my hands to heaven, shout your praises loud. I was lost in darkness when you pulled me out. I will sing forever of your love. Come down. I will sing forever of your love. Come down. I once was blind, I could not see, and chains of sin had shackled me. But God in heaven, he heard my plea, and Jesus, Jesus rescued me. Jesus, Jesus rescued me. I will sing forever of your love. Come down with my hands to heaven, shout your praises loud. I was lost in darkness when you pulled me out. I will sing forever of your love. Come down. I will sing forever of your love. Come down. Now grace so sweet, it floods my soul, and hope eternal won't let go. My debt erased at Calvary, then Jesus, Jesus rescued me. Jesus, Jesus rescued me. I will sing forever of your love. Come down with my hands to heaven, shout your praises now. I was lost in darkness when you pulled me out. I will sing forever of your love. Come down. I will sing forever of your love. Come down. Well, there's a home beyond the sky, a song we'll sing for all of time. The grave is empty, I am free. Now Jesus, Jesus rescued me. Jesus, Jesus rescued me. I will sing forever of your love. Come down with my hands to heaven, shout your praises loud. I was lost in darkness when you pulled me out. I will sing forever of your love. Come down. I will sing forever of your love. Come down with my hands to heaven, shout your praises loud. I was lost in darkness when you pulled me out. I will sing forever of your love. Come down. I will sing forever of your love. Come down. I will sing forever of your love. Come down.
And that's our show. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. It's a little lonely with Ethan not being here. It's just not the same without you, man. And so, Ethan, I hope that you feel better real soon. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. We love you so much. And guess what? You should be getting a summer calendar very, very soon, because summer is about to start happening. We're starting to get back together. It's going to be a good time. It's going to be a great summer. So make sure that you're looking out for that. Anyways, thanks for coming. Love you guys. Bye.